Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I'm your host, Kashi, Sehgal, and we have a great show for you today. We're very excited, but we want to say welcome to all the students watching us today and who are going to be asking questions. Even if you're not asking questions and you're just watching, we're happy you're here. All the graduates that have recently finished school and all the students that recently went back to school, you guys are going to do great, and it's going to be an awesome year, even if it looks different. So we're here for you, and that's what this show is here for too. So ask your questions and get them ready because we have an amazing guest today. Let me bring her up on screen to join us. Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, how are you?
I am doing well.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, we got it. You see me?
There you are.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. Hi.
We're excited to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
All
So
right.
let me introduce you guys to Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice. She is president and dean of the Morehouse School of Medicine, and she's the first woman to ever hold that position. So it's really exciting and such a great thing for her and for all of us and for the community. So we just want to jump right in and start with some questions, and then we'll get to yours. Please tell us where you went to school. You went to a bunch of great schools. One of them I also went to. So please tell us where you went to school, and do you even remember your graduation speakers? You probably had a few of them.
Yes, I have had a lot of schools I've gone to. So first of all, Kashi, thank you so much for doing this, and I'm so excited. I always get excited when I get to talk to students. It has been the sort of the lifeline for me and keeping me motivated to keep doing what I do. So first of all, I'm from Macon, Georgia. So I'm a Georgia peach, quote unquote. I went to Southwest High School, graduated in 1979. And at that time, Southwest High School was the largest high school in the nation. My graduating class was 1,049. Okay.
Oh my
it was
gosh.
a lot of people. We graduated in the Coliseum. Okay. So we also had the #1 basketball team in the nation too at that time. So It was a great time to be in high school. I then went to Georgia Tech. Did not
Go
have
Jackets.
a lot of, Go Jackets did not have a lot of pre-counseling. No one really said, oh, you're a great student, you should look at all of these schools. It was actually my science teacher, Mrs. Newbold, who said, you know what, you're great in math and science, and they actually are recruiting students to be engineers. And they really want more Black students to be engineers. So why don't you go to Georgia Tech? And I said, sounds good. I then went to Georgia Tech and started co-oping as a chemical engineer major, and really had no idea what an engineer did for a living. I didn't. So I worked for quarter on, quarter off at Procter & Gamble, and it became very clear to me pretty soon that I did not want to be an engineer. And so I felt sort of stuck. But luckily, I have something called resilience, and decided that I could, decide to do something else. And so I decided to go to medical school, and then went to Harvard Medical School. I graduated there in 4 years. I went in thinking I was going to be a neurosurgeon. Did OBGYN as my last rotation, that as you do as a third or fourth year student, and really liked taking care of women, and decided I wanted to be a reproductive endocrinologist and fertility specialist. And so after that, came back to Emory and did my residency, and then did a fellowship at Wayne State in reproductive endocrinology and fertility. And I do not remember any of my graduation speakers. Not a one. The most significant thing is, though, that I graduated from high school, college, and medical school all on June the 11th. So that is my lucky day.
Oh, wow. That is a lucky day.
It is.
That's great. What a crazy statistic, or fact, I should say. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So you became an engineer, right? And first, you were in school for being an engineer. You did your co-op, which is for people that don't have co-op programs, it's where you get to work for a semester. Georgia Tech has this amazing program where you can actually work and be like an intern and experience work while you're in school. So you co-opted and you were an engineer, and then you actually got offered a job to be an engineer. How did you have the confidence to change your mind kind of midway and say, you know what, actually, I think I want to do something completely different?
Kashi, I heard mid. Are we back together?
Well, yeah, yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So you're right. So again, I was co-oping, and it's a 5-year program. And so I was going into the 4th year, and they offered me a job, and it really scared me because I really recognized I didn't enjoy my work. And so it's a funny story, but it's a true story. I pulled out the encyclopedia and I looked up math, science, which are the things I loved, and people. And if you ever do a cross-reference, one of the things that comes up is medicine. And I said, oh, I'll go to medical school. Now, I had no idea what it took to go to medical school. And so I called my advisor. He, of course, thought that I had pretty much lost my mind because I was about to go into the 5 quarters straight to graduate. And he thought, this doesn't make sense. Why don't you just be an engineer? And then if you still think you want to go to medical school afterwards, do that. And I just had that confidence. And I think it came from my mother. My mother had worked at a paper factory for 25 years. She rose to be the highest ranking woman in a paper factory in Macon, Georgia. And so with that, I had a lot of confidence. She raised 4 girls by herself. And she used to whisper things in our ears when she was coming off of the swing shift, or 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. All things are possible. You can do anything. It was subliminal messaging, which I'm sure she did not know that that was the formal term of it. But she really did have us convinced that we could do anything. And I felt like the best investment that I could make was investment in myself. And so I wasn't ready necessarily to go out into the workforce. And I really thought I wanted to have more impact. And I thought medicine would do that. And so I came back to Georgia Tech and went over to Spelman and asked them, what does it take to go to medical school? And got to a summer program at Harvard. Took the MCAT before I left, had not really prepared for it because I didn't know you were supposed to study for the test. But luckily, that prepared me. And applied to medical school, and the rest is history.
Wait. I just have to say, people study for like a long time for med school and for the MCAT. And this woman got into one of the top medical universities in the country just because she wanted to. It's pretty fantastic. You can do anything. This is a you can do anything story.
It is, but let me tell you the difference. And this is what I really think was so significant. At Georgia Tech, which is still the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life, Georgia Tech was. Okay, you know this. It is a hard school. So it was on a quota system. We were tested all the time. So I was very prepared. And that's one thing that I think people have to understand when they go into medicine. You are always learning. I still probably read 2 journal articles every week at least. And I'm not even practicing medicine, but I am still keeping up. I still keep my license up. I still do my recertification. It is a continuous learning opportunity. And so I think that's what Georgia Tech prepared me. I was very disciplined at Georgia Tech because you had to be in order to get through engineering courses. And so I think that preparation for taking a test, because I was so accustomed to taking tests, is what prepared me. And again, I felt a little bit fearless, right? The worst thing would happen, I would have to take the test again to improve my score. Now, when I think about what students do now, I think that they do put a lot of fear into this test. And if they could discipline themselves to be continuous learners, right? Always preparing, and I think that they would have less anxiety associated with the test.
So how do you build that confidence if you don't have somebody there whispering in your ear that you can do it? How do you build that confidence for yourself?
I do think that it is very challenging when you don't have what we consider in this country to be the traditional structure. But remember, I was raised in a single parent household. My mother, my parents divorced when I was 6 years old. And so from that point on, it was 5 girls, 4 daughters, and a mother. And we created a team. And it was about hard work and expectations and understanding that education was going to be the equalizer for us. As well, I had a strong faith community. So outside of my family, I had a church family, which was very important. I also reached out to my teachers, and they were supportive. And so what I'm saying here is sometimes you have to build that family. You shouldn't expect that you can do this alone. And sometimes it's just a matter of asking. A lot of times you think that your story is so destitute or just so different than anybody else. And you would be amazed at the number of people who would love to lend support if you would but just ask.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important point. Just ask, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because everyone needs it. You don't think that the person next to you is asking for help, but they're asking somebody else. So
We are asking somebody else, right? Okay.
Yeah. So we're dealing with this crazy pandemic. We've been now quarantined for 7 months at this point, or something like that. It feels like it's been 2 years. How can students help? Is it them going into medicine? How can we prevent something like this from happening in the future? And how do they help now? Like, how can we activate and get people to wear masks and do all the things that need to be done to keep us all healthy?
So first of all, you have to believe in the 3 W's. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Okay? The 3 W's.
Okay.
Wear your mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. So you have to model the behavior that we want others to exhibit, okay? We have to model that behavior, because young people definitely are ones that are asymptomatic carriers. No intention of your own, but you just have healthier immune systems. And so a virus can hang out in you and you can flush it out much easier than others. So you do have to be cognizant. So first of all, we need to do the right things, right? We need to do the right things. The second thing is ask yourself, what is your circle of influence? Who is it that you get to influence? Who is it that is going to see you model this great behavior and is going to want to do what you do? A lot of times that's other younger people, but people in your circle who may not feel as secure stepping out front. So sometimes we have to lead by our behavior. And then I would say, find something in some way to give back. This mask that I have on, this material is from Zambia, because we have research projects that we do in Zambia. And this material is from a group of women there. I took this material, gave it to one of my girlfriends, and she made all of these beautiful masks as her way to give back. And so there are lots of creative ways that we can partner to give back. We're moving into an election period. How many people are going to be afraid to go and vote? What can you do to help ensure that people have the opportunity to participate in voting? Are there things that you can do? Getting people's mail, taking it to them, putting it on their doorstep for older people. Are there things that we can do to provide security for people in that way? Working the phone banks, regardless of what your political affiliation is, everybody needs to have the opportunity to vote. So there are lots of different things that we can do.
Yeah. And along those lines, we need poll workers. because so many of our elderly are the people that usually work the polling stations. And so we need young people to come and help. And it's a great part-time job for a little while, for a few weeks, you know?
And we really do. And then, you know, everything is technology. So I see people fumbling at the poll station, so they could definitely use some of you who are much more astute than many of us at these stations. So that's a great idea, Kashi. That's a great idea.
So you have been in STEM. You know, we talk a lot about STEM education now for girls, especially, but I would imagine when you were going through school, not that I'm saying anything, but when you were going through school, you know, it wasn't something that girls really went into, right? I mean, it was different. And then you became an engineer, and like, I'm sure there weren't many women engineers. And then you decided to go to med school, and like, you've just constantly pushed barriers. How did you overcome some of the challenges that other people put in your life? So maybe being a girl, you know, being at Georgia Tech, or, you know, woman engineer, you almost got, you know, became an engineer, or like, you know, becoming a doctor. How do you overcome some of that? You know, also with like Black Lives Matter and you being African American. I mean, there's just so much that's stacked up against us. How do you navigate that?
You know, I guess I never have been a person who looked at challenges as anything but opportunities. And so I never saw myself less than. And I really do believe that was partly my upbringing, having a strong faith and having a mother who was working in this environment that was very much a male-dominated environment. Now, she probably took a lot of hits for us, right? So she probably had a lot of things that happened at that plant that we would have never understood, right? With her protecting herself in that environment, because it was a very sexist environment. And she used that to channel positiveness into us about how we didn't want to find ourselves limited by what we could do for the rest of our lives. So to really focus on our education so that we always had choices. So I went into this with this real belief that education was going to open all of these doors. And when someone tried to close a door, I just found another door to go in. I live by this saying that life is about how you prepare for plan B. And plan B does not mean that I'm expecting a different outcome. It just means that I'm going to achieve that outcome in a different way. So I have lived my life that way.
So it doesn't always look the way you think it's going to look, but you can still get there. It just got to have a plan B and sometimes a plan C, D, E, you know, you never know.
And that actually is what makes it fun too. Okay. So if you could really map out your entire life and know what it's going to look like 30 or 40 years from now, that probably is going to take away some of the fun.
That's true.
Yeah.
Fun. It keeps it fun and interesting. So we have a lot of questions, but the first one I'm going to ask is from our friend, Jeff Hillemeyer, who is joining us. He says, if Dr. Rice could go back in time and talk to her younger self, what advice would she give? Great question, Jeff.
What I would tell her is that give life time to unfold.
It's a good one.
There were many times when I was very impatient. And my team would be laughing right now. Say, that hasn't changed. Actually, I have slowed down. I would have given life more time to unfold. I really, particularly in my 20s and 30s, was really had myself on a clock. Okay, you got to do this, and probably it's because, you know, medical school and everything comes in 4 and 5 year cycles, right? Yeah. And so some people put me on a clock, right? And then when I really did have some control, I didn't recognize how much control I had. And so I would have taken a year off and done international work a lot sooner, because that was a life-changing opportunity for me when I started working in Zambia and doing that type of work and starting to see how much the world had to offer. And so I think everybody who's going to ever be in a care delivery opportunity ought to really experience global health in some way. It humbles you to understand how great we have it here in the United States and how much we have to offer to others.
Interesting. Yeah. That global perspective helps with so much in your life, not just work, but, perspective on how to deal with people. And so, yeah, definitely take those opportunities if you can find them. Let's go to some student questions.
Okay.
Samantha would like to know, are you discouraged about what you see in the world today, and how do we stay positive?
So the other saying in my life is, I am always a glass half full person. I presume good intent until proven otherwise. And I always believe that what's possible because I believe in people. And so I'm not discouraged. I actually am more excited today than I probably was 5 years ago, because I think people are, and my staff always laughs when I say this, because my daughter taught me this, that they are becoming woke, okay? The people are actually beginning to see the challenges that persons of color have been dealing with all of their lives. People are beginning to appreciate what microaggressions in the workplace or in a school setting and how that detracts from people bringing their best self to work. Mm-hmm. People are understanding that differences should be celebrated and not put in a box. And if we let people bring their best self to work, what could we accomplish? If people get to bring their life experiences and share with how that helps them to come to a decision, it adds to the richness of the solution. So people are finally being heard. And I think that matters. Now, I am sad that we have over 160,000 people who have died, what I believe unnecessarily, with this virus, because we have not had the leadership to lead us through this pandemic. And if we had done some of these things that people are advocating for now sooner, perhaps we would have saved lives. But I'm also optimistic about the collaboration that I'm seeing with us trying to develop the vaccine and the other collaborations with therapeutics, etc. So I believe that we will come out of this a stronger nation, but we will also have not be allowed to forget those lives that have been lost as we woke up.
Right. David would like to know, what mistakes did you make early in your career?
Ooh, which one would they like to know about? Again, if you are a person who's a glass half full person, you don't think about things on a mistake perspective. You think about them as like learning trajectory, right? And I would say that I probably would have been nicer along the way to people who I think were who I felt were impeding my progress. And I think that there's never not enough time to be kind. And so I would say that just understanding the value proposition of kindness and how you make people feel is probably where I think that I could have had the best level of growth and change.
I think that is such incredibly important advice. My parents always told me that people will remember how you make them feel, and not necessarily what you say. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's great. Katrina would like to know, who are your mentors?
So I think my strongest mentor, and even though I still only have her memory, is my mother. My mother has definitely was my mentor. I had great mentors in high school. My principal, Miss Gloria Washington, and then my mentor for life is my research mentor from Harvard Medical School, Dr. Ann Kiesling. She has been my mentor since I was a third year medical student and still today. There are two people who I probably have never taken a job decision without talking to them, Ann Kiesling and Isaac Schiff.
So, professors can be mentors. They don't just have to teach you things in the classroom, right? They can teach you a lot outside the classroom. So it's a good one.
Yeah.
Ashley would like to know, how are you getting yourself through the world today, and what strategies do you use?
So I would tell you the biggest challenge right now with this hybrid world we're living in, because we're back at Morehouse School of Medicine, but we're in a low density hybrid model. Half of the workforce is here on Monday, Wednesday, and half are here on Tuesday, Thursday, and we alternate Fridays. Our clinical workforce is fully engaged, though. I am a person who gets my energy from people and not necessarily through Zoom. And so I have to figure out ways to connect to people, even though socially distanced and wearing my mask, but just seeing people definitely helps. And then I have just been thinking about the lessons that we're learning while we go through this and how I'm going to apply them so that we can be a much more stronger and resilient organization. We have a lot of town hall meetings and communication with our entire employee base, and I try to listen for what's causing them anxiety and figure out strategies to support them through this process.
So talking about support, Grace is looking for a little mentoring right now from you. She wants to know, she says, how do I decide between going to medical school and taking on so much debt and staying in medicine, but going in a different direction and maybe becoming a nurse or a PA? How would you help her navigate that decision? That seems like a big decision.
All of them are noble professions. So for me, it was about, I wanted to have the greatest amount of autonomy and flexibility. And I thought that being a physician would give me that. I wanted to be able to operate, see patients, work in the laboratory, go out and do field work and research if I wanted to. And I felt that having an MD degree that would allow me to practice at the top of my license would allow me that level of flexibility. However, medicine is clearly a team sport. So I would have never been able to do what I do if I didn't have the great nursing support. No way. The nurses saved me so many times, particularly in training in the operating room, or you're delivering a baby and they would say, when Dr. So-and-so does this, he actually uses this instrument, or he might consider doing this. And that is because they had so much experience. And that was their way of telling you, okay, look, this is the way you're supposed to do it, because they could probably technically do the procedure better than you. And so I have always been endearing to the nursing staff that supported me. So nursing is great. And then physician assistants, they have been able to add such a great dimension to healthcare delivery. And so I think either one of them. And so it's a matter of what do you sort of envision, how you want to practice, which is what would drive me. Now let's talk about debt. There's way too much debt to go to medical school. And I spend more of my time fundraising for scholarships and support for my students. However, I went to Harvard Medical School, and at that time, Harvard Medical Schools did not give out any academic scholarships. And so I got a couple of grants. I got a little bit of financial aid, but most of it was that base loan. But I figured out that I needed to make this investment in me because I was the one that I could count on. And so I never really thought that much about it. I thought I would have a way to pay it back, which I did. Now, it took me 10, 12 years to pay it back, but it was worth the investment. And so you're making an investment in yourself. And I think that's what you have to balance between. And you also have to say, okay, are there medical schools that I can go to, which there are, that will allow you the opportunity to not incur so much debt? Okay, so there are medical schools that do offer different type of funding mechanisms for school.
Yeah, definitely there are some options, and good luck with the choice. Brielle would like to know, how do you separate your feelings and emotions from difficult decisions, or I guess in difficult decisions?
So one of the things about going to engineering school, life is, and as an engineer, I really did think about things in boxes. So things were very black and white. Because in engineering, the answer is either right or wrong. Okay, if you're building a bridge, you can't be a tenth off. Okay? You can't. All right. So you are creating detergent and stuff. You need to have the formula right. So that is definitely a discipline training. I had to sort of unwind some of that when I got to medical school, because there are some black and white decisions in the OR. But there are a lot of gray decisions, right? Because in that gray zone is where the people hang out, right? That's where the people hang out. And so when I really think about this, I am very, very good at compartmentalizing. But when you do that, you really do miss the impact that it has on people. And so I try not to let my emotions guide my decision, but I do not make emotionless decisions. I am a very much data-driven person. So I'm a scientist, there's no doubt about it. I can run any numbers. I can figure out most situations. And then I know now how to integrate the emotions and the people in that decision to come out of what I hope is a very culturally sensitive and culturally relevant decision that's going to not have negative impact. And even if it does not affect everyone positively, that they will understand how I came to that decision.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with empathy. And so you can be empathetic without being emotional,
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
I'm not afraid also to show my emotion. I mean, I'm not afraid to, I don't see crying or showing your emotion as a sign of weakness. And I never buy into stereotypes of hysterical females and all of this, I don't buy into those, because this is who I am.
Is that something you can do as a young woman coming up in the world? Can you cry at work and have it be okay?
Some do.
I mean, I have, but sure.
Here is what I say to young women and young men. So it's not, you do have to, particularly in medicine, you have to figure out how to create the balance. And then you got to have the outlet. You got to create the balance, and then you got to have the outlet. And the balance is, okay, I'm sitting here in front of my patient. They're looking for me to provide them with some guidance, and they're looking for my strength, even though I'm about to give them some really awful news. So I practice, right? I say it to myself, or I say it in the mirror, and I've done this 1,000 times before I tell it to them, so that I can hold my emotions intact. Now, I may have cried beforehand or I may cry afterwards. And I've done both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the same thing for joy also, right? Because a lot of times the experiences you're going to have are joyous experiences. And so a lot of time you have to practice. And then you got to have that sounding board. You got to have those support systems that you can call and say, you know, I don't want to say hello. I don't want to say how you doing. I just need to vent and tell you this. And I don't need your opinion today. I just need to get this out. And so I've always said that I have this personal board of advisors.
Mm-hmm.
One group of people on there are people who have given me great professional guidance.
Yeah.
And then there are these people who have just been my sounding board. And they've been able to give me information sometimes back that I didn't want to necessarily hear, but it has guided me so that I could be a better person. And I think that, you know, that's the blessing you get from friendships. And let me say one thing about friendships also. Because medicine takes up a lot of space in your life when you're going to medical school or nursing school, etc. It's just all encompassing, right?
Yeah.
You know, my daughter is a first-year vascular surgery resident at Penn, okay? And she's like on midnight shift. And so she has one day off a week right now. And I can just hear my life in the background because I know exactly how she feels. And what I say to her, still make time for your family and make time for your friends. Make time for relationships. And you are not the star. Because just because somebody hasn't chosen to go down the path that you've chosen to go down, they still may have times in their life that they need you, just like you need them. So make time to cultivate friendships and maintain those friendships because they will matter and you won't be on this crazy track all of your life.
Yep, they absolutely will matter. This, I think, leads us to probably our last question because we are running out of time quickly. So Kate, and we actually have this question coming in from a few people. Kate and Peggy Rogers, Still Johnson, would like to know, how do you get work-life balance? So Peggy asks, how does Dr. Rice keep balance with career, family, self, and how does she spend time in self-care, especially at this unprecedented time? So that kind of what you were talking about with friends.
So let me help people with this. There's it's sort of delusional that there's this work-life balance. Clearly in my career, there were some days I was just a doctor. There were some days that I had to be primarily a mother. Mm-hmm. And then there were days I really needed to be a wife, okay? So, and a friend, right? And so surrounding yourself with the right people helps you to kind of get to some level that people can tolerate you, okay, with all the things and all the balls you have up in the air. But I have always been a person, you all, of extreme discipline. And so I get up in the morning and I exercise probably 2 to 3 days a week. And the days that I don't get up in the morning to exercise, I do something 1 or 2 days in the afternoon. I love to walk. I also enjoy cooking. I mean, I made some great chocolate chip cookies last night. Now, my husband and I will eat one cookie, but I felt I was feeling very maternal. I miss my kids a lot. And so I do things that bring me joy. I love going to spas. And the one thing that I have stopped doing as much was reading because I was trying to be technologically savvy like everyone else and read on their iPads, etc. But I still like the feel of a book. And so what I started back doing this summer was buying my books and actually looking elderly, as my daughter said, and having my book that I'm actually reading, because that actually brings me comfort and joy. And so I do think that you have to, first of all, make time for self-care. And for me, it's exercise. Okay. Now, I do like to go to spas also, but I haven't been to one lately. And then
all in the health category. That's all in the health category.
Finding these things that bring you joy. like cooking, like, reading, and then spending time doing that. You will, because all of you are early on in your career, there will not seem like there are enough hours in the day, but there are. And then you got to get some rest. 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night does make a difference. And I know you may not believe that, but it does make. Now, one thing that I don't do that a lot of people I know do is they take naps. I don't take naps. To me, that's a waste of time in a day, but that's just me. But if that's what gives you joy, then take your 30 or 45-minute nap. And don't be ashamed to say that that's what gives you joy. So
there's a whole country's culture around taking naps.
Yes,
siestas, right? So it's no big deal if that's what you need.
That's right.
Well, Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, we are so happy that you were able to spend time with us today. We really appreciate it, answering the students' questions and my questions, and it's just been invaluable. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Can I leave you with one quote?
Yes, please.
Particularly in this time. Every unexpected change is an opportunity for something wonderful. Every unexpected change is an opportunity for something wonderful. We will come out of this pandemic better than we were before. The question is, how will you contribute to something wonderful?
I love that. It's beautiful. Yeah, so students, keep that in mind as you are moving through your days and moving through life. How are you going to do something more or get into good trouble, right? As we're talking about these days.
Yeah.
So I just want to remind everyone that you can find us on the web everywhere, and we are doing some work to make it even easier to connect with us. So I'm going to announce that on our next show, so stay tuned. We've got great guests coming up. We've got Kevin Gooch, who is a big time lawyer here in Atlanta and a friend of mine, also president of 100 Black Men of Atlanta. So that will be great, and we're excited to talk to him. Everyone, students, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Remember to be happy, healthy, be kind to others, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.